Personal finance practice problem using OneNote. Unit price calculation. Prepare to get financially fit by practicing personal finance. Here we are in OneNote. If you have access to OneNote, would like to follow along, you're not required to, but if would like to, we're in the icon on the left-hand side. We're in the Practice Problems tab down in the 6130 Unit Price Calculation tab. Also note, when using OneNote, take a look at the Immersive Reader tool. Our presentations will also be in the text area with the same name, same number, but with transcripts. Transcripts that can be translated into multiple different languages and either listened to or read in them. Closing the icon, got the information up top, calculations on down below. We're looking at unit price type of calculations for standard goods, this being a useful method for us to be comparing and contrasting different items, either different items of different quantities or different brands together, so that we're comparing, as they say, apples to apples, the same thing to the same thing. Oftentimes, of course, when you're looking at different things of the same kind of thing, but different brands and so on, they may have different units or standardized units that they are providing, and it could be useful then to try to break those down to a unit by unit calculation, this then helping you with our comparisons. So we'll just go through a couple common things here. Obviously, this kind of concept can apply to most types of things that we would be shopping around for. As we look on to many more things being online, then it's actually nice that we can actually check out some of these items online and possibly do the calculation before we go into the store, or even possibly purchasing them online. And that could make things a little bit easier as well, as opposed to basically, going through the shelves. When you go through the shelves in the stores, you also have to deal with the fact that the way they organize their shelves are going to be having some kind of rhyme or reason to them for marketing purposes as well. So sometimes it can be easier to take the time outside and then go in and basically have your decisions made as you go and do your shopping, however you would like to do that. But in any case, could be a useful tool. Also note that when you get to like small types of units, as we'll see with the last calculation, you can get to very small numbers, less than pennies, and you might then do some adjustments for it. So we'll see that in the last calculation when we break it down for tissues at the end. Okay, so we're starting off with the motor oil. We're going to say that the 2 quarts of motor oil cost $1.95. $1.95 for the motor oil. And so if we were to break this down into our unit price to be comparing different items of possibly different quarts to be purchasing or possibly different brands, we could take then that 1.95 and divide it by the 2 quarts, 1.95 divided by 2. That would give us a unit price of the 0.98, about 0.975 cents that we could then be comparing from brand to brand. We then have the cereal. Now, as we all know, those tricky cereal people have the giant box, and then they put like a bunch of air in the box and the bag, and it's really sneaky, deceiving type thing, I feel like, because you get half a bag of air. But in any case, now what you want to do is break it down so that you can get a per unit possibly calculation between different brands of cereal and so on. So then we're going to say that's going to say the price is going to be a 3.35, and we're going to say that there's 15 ounces in there. So if we could say, all right, well, we've got 3.35 divided by 15. We've got the about 22 cents, 22333, and so on, which again might make it a little bit easier to at least determine the brands that are going out of control with half a box of stuff. Obviously, different cereals have different weights, and they're more dense cereals and less dense, so it's a little bit difficult. You can have a little box of something that's more dense type of stuff versus really airy kind of cereal in there, and it can be a little difficult to do the comparisons. But in any case, breaking it down per unit can be useful. We got the canned fruit. We're talking ounces 13, price at the 1.05. So we could take the price 1.05 times the 13 ounces, 1.05 divided by 13. We get about the 0.080. Obviously, we're starting to take a look at small numbers when we're breaking it out on a per ounce basis. But if you're talking about a lot of ounces, they can add up. So sometimes it would be useful to go beyond cents to pennies. In other words, to more accurate numbers beyond that. You could do that with Excel very easily. So if you do these calculations in Excel, Excel will use the actual number even though you're only looking at 0.08 and so on. So that's another reason it's kind of nice if you can look these things up from home, determine what the prices are, and do your calculations and your comparisons between brands, and then just go there and pick up the brands that you have decided on beforehand. Then we got the tissue unit price. We're going to break this down a little bit differently because the tissues we're going to calculate per tissue, but again, we're going to get to this really small number on a per tissue basis because they give us a lot of tissues for pretty cheap. It costs a very small amount for one tissue apparently. So then we could try to say, well, how much does it cost per 100 tissues, which might make it a little bit easier to do the comparison. So you might see something like this with some types of things that we purchase. We might say the price is $3.85 for the box of tissues. There's 300 tissues in it. So we're going to say, all right, that's going to be 3.85 divided by the 300 tissues. And we get the 0.012. And I think that's actually kind of still an expensive price because that's still, it's a penny, a little less, a little over a penny. But we might say, well, that's still kind of small to be comparing with other tissues on a per tissue basis. So you could say, well, why don't we take that and multiply it, say, times 100, and we'll get the price per 100 tissues. So clearly when we're doing the comparison there, then we can try to break the calculation down to a per 100 tissue type of calculation, and possibly that makes it a little bit easier for us to do the comparison. Again, if you did this in something like Excel, these small numbers, you can use these small numbers and do the comparisons with them and not have to worry so much about the rounding when you do the comparative types of calculations. If you're doing it with the trusty calculator while you're in the store with pressure on you and your cart's in the middle of the store blocking traffic and whatnot, and you're trying to calculate the tissue box, which is on the bottom shelf, so you're kind of, squatting down, your back's hurting and whatnot, then you probably want to do some estimates probably here to do that on those types of calculations as well.